For decades, the entire world of sales has been built on a few core sacred ideas. But what if I told you the single largest study ever done on selling proved that for your most important deals, those ideas aren't just wrong? What if they're actually costing you business?
Oh, yeah. You've heard it. I've heard it. We've all heard it. It's the mantra that's been hammered into salespeople for generations. It's supposed to be the climax of the call, that big moment of truth, the one skill that separates the winners from the losers. It's the foundation of pretty much every sales training program out there.
And that is the big question we're tackling today. We're going to look at the actual hard data that completely blows up this cornerstone of sales wisdom, and it reveals a totally different, research-backed way to win the deals that really matter. Okay, so to really get the revolution, first we have to understand the old way of doing things. For more than 60 years, there's been this one traditional model that huge companies, we're talking IBM, Xerox, AT&T, have used to train their sales teams. This four-step process probably looks pretty familiar, right? You open the call, you ask some questions to figure out what they need, you get ready to handle all the objections, and then you close. The big emphasis has almost always been on those last two steps, handling objections and closing the deal. They've been taught as the absolute keys to getting that signature. But then, a team of researchers led by a guy named Neil Rackham decided to actually, test if these long-held beliefs were true. They didn't rely on stories from sales gurus. They went out into the real world and collected a mind-blowing amount of data. And what they found was absolutely stunning. Now, let's just pause for a second and let that number sink in. This was not some small one-off study. We are talking about 35,000 sales calls. They were observed and analyzed over 12 years across 27 different countries. This is, without a doubt, one of the biggest research projects ever done on what actually works in sales. So here's the bombshell. When the researchers compared what top performers were doing in successful calls versus what happened in unsuccessful ones, the results were the complete opposite of what all the training books said. The successful calls actually had fewer closing attempts. They generated fewer objections from the customer. The old playbook wasn't just failing, it was making things worse. Now, this finding was so wild, so against everything people believed, that the researchers decided they had to dig deeper, and they pointed their microscope right at that most sacred rule of all, the close. They actually set up a really clever experiment to test it. This PhotoStore study just lays it all out perfectly. The researchers trained salespeople in all the classic closing techniques, and for small, low-value items, their success went up a little bit. But for the more expensive cameras, their success rate absolutely plummeted. It dropped from 42% before the training all the way down to 33% after. The more they tried to close, the less they sold. It's crazy. So this begs the million-dollar question, right? If these classic techniques work okay for small sales, why do they backfire so spectacularly the second the deal gets bigger? Well, the answer isn't in the technique. It's in the customer's head. Look, a small sale and a big sale might seem similar on the surface. You've got a buyer, you've got a seller, but psychologically, they are worlds apart. The entire way a customer thinks and makes a decision changes completely when the stakes are high. Just think about it. A small sale is quick, low risk, a one-time thing. If you feel a little pressure to buy a coffee or a magazine, sometimes it's just easier to say yes than to argue. But a major sale? That is the complete opposite. It's going to involve multiple meetings over months. It's the start of a long-term relationship, and the risk of making a mistake is huge and very, very public. In that environment, pressure doesn't get you a yes, it just makes the customer suspicious and defensive. You're not just buying a thing, you're starting a partnership. Okay, so if the old model is broken for big sales, what are we supposed to do instead? Well, the great thing about this research is that it didn't just find the problem, it also uncovered the solution. By studying what the most successful salespeople were actually doing, they discovered a brand new, powerful framework. So let's go back to those 4 stages of a sales call. All the traditional training, it was obsessed with the end of the call, right? Obtaining commitment. But the data pointed somewhere else entirely. Overwhelmingly, the single biggest difference between success and failure in major sales happens right here, in the investigating stage. This is where the deal is really won or lost. And inside that investigating stage, the top performers do something very, very specific with customer needs. They get this crucial difference between an implied need and an explicit need. See, an implied need is just a hint of a problem. A customer says something like, "Yeah, this process is kind of slow."
An average salesperson hears that and they pounce. They think it's a buying signal. But the top performers know, in a big sale, that is nowhere near enough. They have to develop that little problem into an explicit need, a clear, strong statement like, we absolutely need to find a way to speed this process up. This, right here, is the absolute core of the whole strategy. It's not about finding a problem and then immediately pitching your solution. It's about working with the customer, exploring that problem together, digging into it until they are the one who says how urgent and important it is. You don't tell them the value of your solution, you lead them to discover it for themselves.
And the tool they use to do this is called the spin sequence. It's brilliant. You start with situation questions, just to get the facts. Then you move to problem questions to uncover those little hints of trouble, the implied needs. Now, this is where most salespeople stop, but the pros keep going. They ask implication questions to really explore the consequences, the ripple effects of that problem. They build the pain. And then finally, they use need-payoff questions, asking things like, so what would it mean if you could fix that? This gets the buyer to spell out the value of a solution in their own words, and boom, you have an explicit need. So once you have this new way of thinking about building needs, well, the end of the call has to change too. If all those aggressive closing techniques are out, what do you replace them with? The goal isn't to corner the customer into a decision, it's to secure a commitment that just feels like the natural next step. I mean, you can't just end the call awkwardly and leave everything hanging, right? You still need a clear result. So in a complex sale that might take months to finish, what does a successful outcome actually look like? The research found another game-changing distinction here, the difference between continuations and advances. A continuation sounds nice. It's, hey, we're very impressed, let's talk again soon. But it's empty. No actual action has been agreed to. An advance, on the other hand, is a concrete, specific action that moves the sale forward. It's a meeting with the CFO, a trial of the product, getting access to some data. Successful sellers are obsessed with getting advances, not continuations. So instead of using some manipulative closing trick, the best salespeople follow this really clear, logical sequence. First, and most importantly, they've already built a ton of value during the spin investigation. So from there, it's just a natural next step. They check if there are any other concerns, they quickly summarize the benefits the customer has already agreed are important, and finally, they don't ask for the order. They propose a logical next step, a clear advance that keeps everything moving. It's collaborative, not coercive. This quote just perfectly sums up the whole mindset shift. In major sales, signing the contract isn't the finish line. It's the starting line. The real goal isn't to get a signature and disappear. It's to build the foundation for a long, valuable partnership. All right, so after diving into all this groundbreaking research, what are the big things you need to walk away with? Let's quickly recap this new playbook. First, for any big sale, just forget always be closing. It's more likely to hurt you than help you. Second, remember your customer is trying to lower their risk, so piling on pressure is the worst thing you can do. Third, the real battle is won or lost in the investigating stage, not at the end. Fourth, your number one tool is that spin questioning sequence to help the customer see the urgency for themselves. And finally, judge how well a call went by concrete actions, advances, not by nice-sounding words or continuations. The evidence is just crystal clear. The skills you need to win major sales are totally different from what most of us were taught. So the final question isn't for me, it's for you. In your very next big sales call, what's the one classic habit you're going to replace with one of these research-backed methods?